Hello, can y'all hear me? Yeah. Yes. First, I want to say thanks for you guys sticking around after lunch. I know it's Friday afternoon. A lot of people probably just sneak away. So we appreciate you guys staying around. It's funny because I was in a wedding just last weekend, and the bride at the very end of the reception said that the most important people are there at the end. So that's you guys. So we're Market Street Solutions. We're a business analytics consulting firm. And we're actually an IBM business partner, and we leverage tools, some of the tools that you guys have heard in the last couple of days, Cognos, SPSS, Netezza. We leverage those technologies to build business analytics solutions for our clients. We have 3 areas of focus, and that's business intelligence, data warehousing, and predictive analytics. So we've been around for about 10 years, and we're actually a Tennessee-based business, so our offices are in Chattanooga, but we have resources all across the state as well as the Southeast. Some of the clients that we work with locally are Team Health, Clayton Homes, Eastman Chemical, Idle Air. So we work with everything from mid-sized businesses to Fortune 500 companies. And we really want to be that trusted advisor to build that best practice-based business analytics solution for you guys. So we're a reseller, so we can sell the software, but we also do everything from implementation to training, support. So we like to kind of think of ourselves as a one-stop shop for IBM Analytics. So today we have Jami Wolbers from Market Street that's going to give a presentation, and she is a training consultant in Market Street. So she does our classroom training for our Cognos clients, and she also is responsible for our e-learning program as well as all of the training materials. She's also the organizer for the Tennessee Business Analytics user group. So if you guys want information about that, you can ask us after the meeting today. And before she came to Market Street, she actually was involved with or worked for Nike in Europe, and she was involved with their customized training for their TM1 implementation. She also worked for an insurance-focused software company called Vertifor. She has a Master's of Education in Human Resources and Organizational Development, that's a mouthful, and also a Bachelor's of Art in Spanish and Speech Communication, both from University of Georgia.
Go Dogs!
So we won't hold that against her. So her presentation today is about data visualization. So dashboards are becoming a really vital component to business analytics solutions, and so she's going to show you 10 techniques to communicate your data visually, and it's in the form of a quiz, so put on your thinking caps. So.
Thanks, Tanya. All right, so hopefully this will be the best presentation you've attended so far, because I'm going to teach you something that you can use right when you get back to your office. We're going to talk about some techniques to help build graphs and charts and that sort of thing, and it's really tool independent. I'm not going to teach you about Cognos today. If you want to learn about Cognos, Tanya can get you hooked up with some of that, but this is really just some basic ideas for communicating data visually. Now, I am a training consultant, as Tanya mentioned. My specialty is in adult education, and I spent my career in technology training. I don't sit around all day and think about ways to visually communicate data. This is not my area of expertise. So I'm borrowing a lot of the work here, most of it from Stephen Few. He's one of the gurus in data visualization. He's not the only one. There's different schools of thought, and different experts think there's better ways to do things. At Market Street, we particularly subscribe to Stephen's philosophy because it's simple. It's one of those, keep it simple, less is more. And we think it's easy for our consultants to implement when they're on, at the client site, but also for clients to take these techniques and run with them as well. So I'll share some of those with you. All right, so I recently attended a training session from IBM. They have a 5-day training session on one of their products called Report Studio, which is what professional, analysts use to create reports in Cognos. And this was in preparation for, an IBM certification, so I can have that sticker on next to my email, that sort of thing. So it's really important. This is what I learned how to do in my training course. Okay, this displays some of the functionality of Report Studio, of creating charts in Report Studio. So here I have what they call a layout calculation. So this is a dynamic field that I've added to my chart that shows a value pulled when the report is run. That's fancy. I've created my own palette here of colors. So I've got grays, I've got patterns, I've got all sorts of stuff going on here. I've also noticed I have two different data items that I'm charting. So I can not only look at my regions, but I can also look at my data by year. So two different ones on the same axis, which is great. There's so much functionality. And we can't forget our mean, for all our statisticians out there, mean plus or minus 1 with our standard deviation, right? Very important. But also notice it's in 3D. Fancy, huh? So there's lots of functionality built in Cognos. There's only one thing that you can't do with this chart. Read it, exactly. Yes. So we have all this functionality, and then our concern at Market Street is that if this is what our report authors are learning, this is what kind of reports they're going to be producing. So this whole presentation here is part of a course that I'm working on developing in best practices in dashboard design and mobile report design. So that's where this is coming from. So now for the test. After lunch, I'm a trainer. We stoop pretty low to keep people engaged. Usually I'll have, especially after lunch, that's the worst time. So usually I'll have something to throw at you if I see you falling asleep, but I didn't grab the candy basket from downstairs at the break, so just have to pick on you. Maybe I'll burn your eyes out with my laser pointer or something. But this is an IQ test that's online. There's a link available here if you'd like to try it out or test it out with some of your colleagues. We are using this with permission from Stephen Few. He has a really interesting blog. It's called Perceptual Edge, and he'll go out. And he's not affiliated with Cognos in any way. He bashes everybody. He'll go to SAP. He'll go to what's the other one? Can't think of the name. But anyway, he'll go out to all these different websites, and especially with marketing material, and he'll pull these graphs that these companies that are specializing in analytics even are using in their marketing material, and he'll tear them apart. He'll say, why are you using this? This is a better way to do it, and he'll really take it down to the bare bones and show you the best ways to visually communicate your data. So this is one of his tests that we'll be using. There's 10 questions on the test. We'll take it together. There's no pressure here. I'm not giving any grades. Which graph makes it easier to determine whether the mid-cap U.S. stock or small-cap U.S. stock has the greater share? Any votes for the pie chart? No votes for the pie chart. Thank you. Thank you. And no offense to the people who had lots of pie charts in the presentation. But it's the bar chart. And there's, now I think people like pie charts because they're pretty. Maybe they're hungry. I don't know. But there's actually a reason behind not using pie charts. And it's that humans have a hard time determining the differences in two-dimensional spaces, in two-dimensional areas, and an especially difficult time when those areas are at angles. So, to me, these pretty much all look the same. Maybe these are a little closer. But when we look at this in a bar chart, they are very close, but you can draw a line straight down and see that the mid-cap has a larger share. So I'm not going to bash all the people that are using pie charts more than I already have. With any chart, when you're choosing any type of visualization of your data, you have to choose the appropriate medium for your data. So I would say pie charts have a purpose. I mean, really though, the only time you should be using a pie chart is if you're showing parts of a whole. I'm just laying it out there. That's the only time. It seems to make sense, right? It's a pie, it's whole, it's round. When I gave this presentation earlier, one of my pie chart fans said, yeah, but sometimes it just really makes the difference, makes it really clear how big the difference is. So I'm like, okay, I'll give you that. If there's a very large variance in the data, if it's like a 2% and a 98%, yeah, maybe that's a good way to show it. But when you're breaking out a chart and a pie chart in so many pieces, you're really just causing more trouble for yourself. It takes too much time to process that. people aren't going to it's not going to stand out visually for them right away. So down with the pie chart. Stick with the cute animals, which I don't have in my presentation. All right, which of these line graphs is easier to read? Anybody like the 2D graph? All right. Now that's the other thing I usually have is prizes for the people that participate. You get a free parking pass if you participate today in the quiz. So yes, the 2D line graph. I think this whole notion of these 3D charts and graphs that are really popular in a lot of the tools that are out there are kind of like all of those PowerPoint templates that come with the software that they say don't use, you know. Especially back in the older versions, they had all these bold colors, and you know, now they have all these different templates available, and it's almost like checking a box on an RFP. You know, it's like, okay, yeah, we have, I think Cognos has like 130 or 160 different chart types. It's like, yeah, you want 3D charts? Check, we have 3D charts. But the problem is, with 3D charts especially, is that they're often rendered on two-dimensional surfaces, right? We're either showing them on a screen or we're printing them out in paper. So what we have to do to make a 3D object visible in a 2D space is really a trick for our eyes. And this idea of the third dimension, it doesn't add anything to the data. You're not adding any value by showing this in a third dimension. And it's much easier to read here with just the 2D lines. The other thing, this is not Stephen Few, this is just driving me nuts about 3D, is this angled baseline. That's not how we read charts, right? We don't like go down like that. So it's, I think that's trying to make it look 3D, but it really just makes it harder to read. So no 3D. Okay, so which of these two tables is easier to read? Anybody like the top one? Anybody have a report that looks like the top one in their organization? Yeah, I thought so. Well, Few would say the bottom table is the one to use. And this is actually kind of borrowing on the work of another guru, Edward Tufte. He coined this term data ink ratio. And he says the data, or pixels now, they're saying, that you use to convey the information should be more than the data or the pixels and ink used for decoration. Okay, so you should strive for a high data ink ratio. You have to be really careful when putting images and borders and shading on your report if it's not contributing to the data. So here, we have these borders at the top, which really add nothing. We have this bold, and I think especially a lot of accounting charts, this comes from like an accounting world where there's the gray line, white line sort of thing. But what happens is, like, all of that extra ink is more information for us to process. So it takes longer. So we have to say, we have to kind of divide it out. And this is especially hard on this projector. We have to divide it out and kind of make these differences. Whereas here, it's so much clearer. The numbers really pop out at you. There's a couple of other things going on here. It's a little more subtle, but it's related to the data to ink ratio. Few calls this eliminating excessive precision or something like that. He says if you're putting decimal places, if the decimal places don't matter, in this case, they're all zeros, or if you're talking in, $40 million, you probably don't care if there's 84 cents or 4 cents on there. If the decimals don't matter, remove them. It's just more data, more ink that you have to work through. Another thing that's eliminated here are the dollar signs. So here, the revenue, assuming that you're working, all in dollars, then you can eliminate the dollar signs. Here it's just at the total. And I would even take it a step further because, up here, you've got your headers labeled in percent. So, maybe even the percent's not necessary to repeat as a sign. So anything we can do to make the data really tell the story is what we're striving for. All right, next one. Which graph makes it easier to focus on the pattern of change through time instead of the individual values? You get the prize for answering first. The line graph. This anyone disagree? Good. This is going back to that choosing the right chart for your data. And line charts are especially good to use when you're displaying a trend over time. So that's just kind of a rule, best practice. If you are looking for individual values, you would want to go with something like the bar chart because that gives you the values a little bit more clearly. But if you're just trying to show some trends, then a line chart's the way to go. And getting back to that excessive precision thing, this is something I really like with the, rather than having all the zeros spelled out, you put the axis in millions, and then you can just go with your 1 or 2 digits there. So it's another nice touch. I just noticed that now. All right, one of these graphs accurately encodes the values, and the other skews the values in a misleading manner. Which one accurately represents the data? Come on this side, wake up. What do you have? What do you have? Right one. All right. Accurately, right. Any guesses why?
Yeah.
Yes, the axis. Oh, got one really excited. Okay. So here, the differences in the data are exaggerated, right? It looks like yes has a quite significant lead over no and undecided, but when you start it at 0, you see there's really not much of a difference. So few sets always start at 0. Now, another time when I was giving this presentation, one of the attendees said, well, what if I'm trying to exaggerate the differences? That's more of an ethics presentation. That's not what we're talking about here. Yeah.
It's political marketing, right?
Yeah.
There was a book in the 1940s called How to Lie with Statistics, and this is one of the techniques.
Yeah. So at Market Street, we're not recommending that method. We'll stick with Hugh's suggestion to always start at 0. Okay. Which map makes it easier to find all of the counties with positive growth rates? A? B? Neither? A? According to the quiz, the answer is A. And it's because our any guesses why?
Yeah, as a fellow trainer, thank you for your all the hot colors are on the left. On the right, you got the hot colors, like one's on the left, one's on the right, so your eyes, there's no system to it.
Right, exactly. And our brain's trying to make a pattern here.
Right.
So we see with this map that the blues, the different shades of blue, are the positive values. So if we try to just focus on that, we can pull them all out. I really do think they're both poorly designed maps. But I think that's the point he was trying to make with this. While we're here, let's talk about maps. Edward had a really good map with the Kroger data that was valid, that was, helpful to have the data in a map. In this case, there's really not a pattern as far as the counties. We're not seeing that all the counties, in the West are positive growth rates. They're just kind of all scattered out. So I would suggest that a list with the growth rates listed beside them would probably be easier to read, probably be able to tell, sort it by highest to lowest, and be a lot easier to see which counties had the growth rate. So maps are helpful if you're trying to show data spatially, but if you're just trying to add some color, it's probably not the best choice. People love maps. They think they're so cool, and again, the maps are in the Cognos demos, I'll tell you that.
It kind of be in a lose-lose situation on that question, because if you put them in a list, and people who know the geographic area would then try to visualize it and say, is there a pattern to where these at the top are?
I mean, maybe. I guess you would really have to know your audience and what they were using for the data. If you're talking about like county extension agents, that might make a difference. But if you're talking about like national sales, you probably could care less. Yeah. All right. So the next one, which graph makes it easier to determine R&D's travel expenses? A? B? I already gave the answer away, right? Don't use 3D graphs. Use the 2D. This one I especially dislike. And this is a great example because on the projector, the bars never come across. But there's actually bars that go like this up here on the 70. That angled baseline thing again? So when I look at this, I see 70. I can use my pointer now. I see 70, and I want to cut across, straight across, right? So then these blue and red or orange colors are off the charts. You can't even tell what the values are. And another issue with this one is that, like, the smaller values are pretty much hidden. You know, there's not really an order to the numbers. They're just all up and down. So like here, sales, software is almost hidden by the orange bars. And in the back as well, there's a little tiny red bar back there. So you can't even see it. I think the issue comes into play where, especially at the upper levels, people go to these demos of software and they see all the bells and whistles. They think, oh, that's pretty. Oh, that's fancy. I want that. But it's not. It's making it more difficult for the people that actually need to look at the data, right? If you're having to find where the values are and dig through, you're just going to make people angry. So let the data tell the story. That's not an easy task. People spend lots of money on analytic systems, and they want to make it pretty, and they want to, you know, have all of these drill-throughs and, you know, like we saw today, the moving bubbles and all of that stuff. So it's more of education on our part to kind of educate our users on interpreting data and how it's actually going to be more efficient if we're just using simple bar charts that people can understand and get along and move on with their day, right? Okay, in which graph are the labels easier to read? I like A? A. Yes, we see the heads. So we should always try to orient the text in the direction that people read, horizontally, left to right, or right to left, whatever it is. Another kind of above and beyond that they take with this, this bar chart is making the axis labels also oriented in the direction that you read. And that's not something you see as often. Usually, you know, you'll have this axis label vertical. So I really like that about this. All right, I think we're getting close to the end. 2 more. Which graph is easier to look at? Do I like the top one? You like the bottom one? It's actually not nearly as ugly up here as it is on my screen. This is more of a fluorescent yellow in real life. So we don't want to anger people. We don't want them to be anxious when they look at our charts and graphs. With this fluorescent yellow highlight, that's how you feel. So at the bottom, it's not exactly a neutral color palette, but it's muted. You know, it's soft and it's easy on the eyes. Whereas, and also notice too, you know, the background is eliminated, and here there's the yellow shading, which, back to that data ink thing, that doesn't add any value to the chart. So you can remove that. Now, we're, you know, report authors, we're data scientists, we're not usually graphic designers. So some people kind of have a knack for matching up color palettes and making things aesthetically pleasing, and some people don't. And if you're not one of those people, then make friends with one of those people and have them look at your charts before, you know, you put it out there for the world. Or better yet, you know, have your users look at your charts, the people that will actually be consuming them, and see what they like. All right, last one. Which table allows you to see the areas of poor performance more quickly? The top one, right. Because if everything's important, then nothing's important, right?
Like highlighting text. You highlight the whole key passages, the whole pages and pages, you're not going to get the important points. Mm-hmm. You just highlight 1 or 2 words and phrases.
Yeah. I mean, here your eyes are automatically drawn to the red boxes, right?
Yes, yes.
And if you're trying to improve performance, that's what you're wanting people to look at, whereas here it can get lost, you know, with everything being highlighted. Another important point to make about this, and I'm guilty, I do this exercise in my training. This conditional formatting is one of the functions that we teach everybody. And so, you know, we do the traffic light, the red, green, yellow thing. But, you know, the numbers vary. Somewhere between 4 and 10% of the male population is colorblind, and it's like 0.4 for the female population. So they can't distinguish the differences between red and green. So this would mean nothing to them. They can, however, distinguish different shades of the same color. So, you know, if I did like blues, different shades of blue, or even different shades of green, I think that, you know, that would come across. Now, Now, you don't want to go out and survey your population and say, hey, who's colorblind? Do I need to design my charts for you? Just be, considerate and basically assume that you're going to have some colorblind people in your audience and design to make your reports and charts more accessible. All right, your quiz is over. Everybody passed. Congratulations. There are actually 13 points, and I was a little bit worried about not filling up my full time. So I have a couple more points I'll hit on real quick that are from, these are actually 13 common mistakes in dashboard design that Few has. So one other one is the context. Frequently in charts and especially in dashboards, it's supplying insufficient context for the data. So in this example, they have a little sparkline chart here, which is nice. It shows you a trend. And then we have just a revenue number. So if I look at this, I say, hey, America is doing great. They have the most revenue. But that doesn't really tell me much. It's just a raw number, right? I don't know if that's hitting our target. I don't know if that's over last year. How does that compare? There's really not enough context. So if I do some calculations and I can add some, compare this revenue to planned revenue, for example, I see that, hey, actually, America's is pretty much performing as as the other regions are. They're all, 4% down. And I could even take this a step further and maybe it's not so important that I know the numbers or the percents. I could do my traffic light, red, green, yellow. Or I could do some kind of visual indicator, if they're on target or below. Speaking of context, gauge charts. I got to go there. Especially with dashboards, people love gauge charts. And I think it's just that whole concept of, hey, this is a dashboard, and we're used to seeing gauge charts on dashboards. Gauge charts are pretty terrible. They take up a lot of space, and especially if you're working with a dashboard, you really should only have it on one screen. So with a gauge chart, you're taking up a lot of space for not a lot of data. So Few, of course, he's actually invented his own new chart type for this, a bullet chart, which is just a line with a mark for the target and where you are. Whether or not you need to use that is, another story. But the gauge charts, you might go from red to green, with one number, or you don't really know. There's not any kind of context around that. So I'll get on the bandwagon with Few here and say, avoid the gauge charts. There's probably a better tool, a better chart to use for that. This one we're all guilty of, probably, designing including meaningless variety. Because we have those expectations out there that there's so much that can be done with these tools, we want to show everybody, ooh, look, I'm smart. That's why I get paid the big bucks, Look, I can do it. This is actually one of those bullet charts. Look, I can do a bullet chart. Look, I can do a 3D cylinder chart and a whatever that is, pyramids. And then a pie chart with no labels to help you really understand what's going on. So we just throw these different things out there to make it, maybe they think it's visually appealing. But what happens is our brain has to take time as we switch between these different charts to process it. Because how I look at a bar chart is different than how I look at a pie chart, and again, different from how I look at a bullet chart. So you're actually slowing down the process there. Whereas this is a dashboard that was developed. I think no, this one's not the Cincinnati Zoo, but there's one similar to it. But here we just have 4 simple bar charts, all using the same color palette, and it's a lot easier to switch between the two. And if there was, in this example, there's not, but you could, if there was a case for comparison between the charts, it would be really easy to do that. Maybe we're comparing to different regions or something. That would be really easy. And the last one is the arrangement. Now, I showed this one, and somebody said, is that a good example or a bad example? So we won't tear apart the whole thing. But I do want to point out, if you're any kind of report that you're developing, whether it's a dashboard or just a standard report, our eyes are drawn to the upper left corner, so that's where you should put your most important data. So in this case, that's where they've put the year-to-date revenue number, and they've kind of taken it a step further and said, highlighted it in the blue to even make it more pop. Typically, what most people do when they design a report is take their company logo, and they put it in the top left corner. So you're wasting some valuable space there where the most important data should be. Another point on this chart that I really like is the numbers here at the top. It's real simple. It gives you a little bit of context with the percentage, but you can make some good comparisons just by looking at the numbers. Now, we won't go into the map. Here's one of these fancy growing bubble charts. I guess we have those, but just want to point out that you should design your dashboard or report to facilitate consumption of the data, whether it's by comparing numbers, arrange things so that it can be easily be compared, or putting the most important data in the top left corner. So, all right. That's 13 things that you're not going to remember, right? I'm going to give you 2 things to remember. Focus on the message. Let the data tell the story. Get out of the way. And let the data tell the story. And aim for simplicity. Just go back and take out some of those logos and get rid of some of those borders and pare it down so that you're making it easier for these people to get to the numbers and know the data. So those are your need to knows. If you do want the whole list, it's on this presentation, and it's 13 common mistakes in dashboard design. But that is my presentation at 31 minutes. Thanks for your time. Thanks for being here. Any questions? Well, if you want to get in touch with me or Tanya, there's my contact information. Oh, and we'll be at the booth, so stop by. We haven't had a lot of visitors, so we'd love to talk to you.
Thank you very much. I found it very interesting. Thanks.